The message from the void. The galaxy was in turmoil. Across countless worlds, the warning signs were there. A mysterious, unstoppable force moving ever closer to the heart of the galaxy. Strange ships had been spotted near the borders of various star systems, their technology unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Planets were falling, and no one knew how to stop it. But then, a message was sent out into the vast reaches of space, a desperate cry for help from an unexpected source. The message came through a quiet frequency, barely noticeable amidst the cosmic noise. A long, crackling transmission echoed through the void. Emergency, galactic extinction, help needed, Earth. The voice, faint and distorted, sent a chill down the spine of anyone who heard it. Earth, the planet that had been silent and unknown to many alien races for centuries, was now calling for help. Back on Earth, in the depths of the Space Command Center, the message was received. The officers scrambled to decrypt the transmission, their faces pale with disbelief. What did it mean? Earth, a small planet tucked away in a relatively quiet corner of the galaxy, was now involved in something that could shake the very foundations of the known universe. Admiral Lena Cruz, the head of Earth's fleet, stood at the center of the command room, watching the screen as the garbled transmission continued. The words were almost impossible to make out, but the fear in the voice was undeniable. "Get me the top engineers and fleet commanders," she said, her voice calm but with a hint of urgency. "We need to understand this message, and we need to do it now." The officers quickly moved to work, but Cruz couldn't help but wonder. Was this a trap? Could this unknown force be luring Earth into a conflict it wasn't prepared for? The galaxy had always been a dangerous place, and Earth's fleet, though strong, was small in comparison to the ancient powers that ruled the stars. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. And yet something in Cruz's gut told her that this wasn't a trick. The plea for help felt real, and the fact that Earth had been mentioned, it could not be ignored. "Admiral, we've traced the source of the message," said her chief communications officer. "It's coming from the outer rim, near the galactic edge. We don't have much time." Cruz nodded, her decision clear. The galaxy was in danger, and Earth had a choice to make. She turned to her officers and addressed them firmly. "Prepare the fleet," she said. "We're going to respond." The call to action was sent. Within hours, Earth's warships, once idle in the safety of their home system, began to power up. Their massive engines hummed with energy, and the once silent war machines began to move, ready for whatever lay ahead. Each ship carried the hopes of Earth and the courage of its people. Their mission was clear: respond to the unknown call for help and face whatever threat loomed over the galaxy. As the fleet assembled in space, Cruz stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Resolute. It was a proud ship, a symbol of Earth's strength, but even its captain couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to enter uncharted territory. No one knew what lay ahead, but Earth was no longer the quiet, isolated planet it once was. Earth's war fleet was now ready to take on the galaxy's most dangerous threat. "The galaxy may be in peril," Cruz said quietly to herself, "but we are Earth, and we don't back down from anything." With the fleet set into formation, they set a course for the outer rim of the galaxy, toward the unknown. The dark expanse of space stretched before them, but the warships moved forward, cutting through the void like a wave of determination. Cruz knew that this would be humanity's greatest test, but she was ready to face it head-on. As the fleet moved further into the unknown, the message echoed in Cruz's mind. Earth, help. A galaxy in peril was counting on them, and humanity's response would either save or doom everything. The stage was set. The unknown enemy waited in the darkness, and Earth's war fleet was ready to fight for the galaxy's survival. The journey through space was long and tense. Earth's fleet, a collection of the most advanced warships humanity had ever built, moved steadily toward the unknown edge of the galaxy. As they sailed through the stars, the feeling of isolation grew. The vastness of space, made even the most advanced ships feel like tiny dots in a never-ending void. But there was no turning back now. Admiral Lena Cruz stood at the front of the bridge of the Resolute, her hands clasped behind her back. The massive warship was at the forefront of the fleet, leading the charge into an unknown danger. The crew worked in silence, their faces focused, but every person aboard knew the stakes were higher than ever before. This was not just a mission. It was a fight for survival. "Admiral, we're approaching the coordinates," the communications officer said, breaking the silence. "We'll be in the target zone in a few hours." Cruz nodded, her gaze steady. "Prepare the fleet for any scenario. I don't trust this unknown force, and I don't believe this is just a simple call for help. We need to be ready for anything." Across the fleet, officers were preparing their ships. Weapons were checked, shields calibrated, and the crew was briefed on what little information they had. Earth's fleet wasn't built for surprise battles. They were made for defense, for protecting their own. But now, the rules had changed. Now they were preparing to engage in something much bigger than they ever could have imagined. Meanwhile, on the outer rim, the situation was growing worse. The alien fleet that had once seemed like a shadow at the edge of the galaxy was now becoming a force to be reckoned with. Entire systems had fallen silent, their lights snuffed out as if swallowed by the darkness itself. The galaxy was on the brink of collapse, and no one knew who or what was behind it. Back in the command room of the Resolute, Cruz couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. She had been in command of the fleet for years, but this was different. No one had ever faced something like this, and the message that had been sent, Earth's call for help, was unlike anything she had ever encountered. The transmission had come from a distant and rarely explored part of the galaxy, a place where even the most daring explorers hesitated to venture. A place known as the Black Void, where strange forces were said to exist and where entire fleets had vanished without a trace. The Black Void, Cruz muttered to herself. "It's not a place anyone goes willingly." "Admiral." The voice of her tactical officer snapped her out of her thoughts. "What is it?" she asked, turning toward the officer. "We've received new intelligence," he said, pointing to a screen that lit up with incoming data. "It seems the enemy force is more organized than we thought. We're looking at something far bigger than what we initially suspected. There are signs of a massive fleet gathering, one that could easily overwhelm anything in our arsenal." Cruz's heart sank. She knew the enemy was powerful, but the thought of facing an overwhelming force shook her confidence. Still, there was no option but to press forward. "We are not backing down," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the room. "We are Earth. We do not surrender. Prepare for battle. If we're going down, we go down fighting." Across the fleet, the same message echoed. Each ship, from the smallest fighter to the largest dreadnought, was preparing for the storm ahead. The crew worked at breakneck speed, fine-tuning every system, making sure that everything was in place for the coming confrontation. The countdown to the battle had begun. As the Resolute neared the coordinates of the original transmission, the fleet entered an eerie silence. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, their light swallowed by the massive void ahead. There was a strange sense of dread that hung over the entire fleet, and no one could deny that they were about to enter a battle that could change the course of history. "Admiral," the communications officer spoke again, her voice trembling slightly. "We've received a second transmission. It's from the same source. But this time, it's different. It's a warning." Cruz's eyes narrowed. "What does it say?" The officer hesitated before reading aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "The enemy is closer than you think. Do not trust anyone. The galaxy has already been compromised. Only Earth's fleet can save what's left. Prepare for the worst." The transmission cut off before they could learn more, leaving a chilling sense of unease in the air. Cruz clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. The galaxy was in chaos, and Earth had just become the only hope left. "We'll be ready," Cruz said, her voice strong despite the fear gnawing at the edges of her mind. Set course for the coordinates. Let's show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. With a single command, the fleet shifted course, heading straight into the heart of the black void, toward the unknown enemy that threatened to tear the galaxy apart. The storm was coming, and Earth's fleet would face it head-on. The black void loomed ahead, an endless expanse that seemed to swallow all light, casting everything in a suffocating darkness. Even Earth's most advanced sensors struggled to peer through the veil of nothingness. As the fleet entered the void, the feeling of unease settled over the entire crew, like a heavy fog pressing in from all sides. The silence was deafening. No communication, no signals, no sign of life anywhere. "Admiral, we've entered the black void," the communications officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy." Cruz stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view outside. The stars were barely visible, their light dimming the deeper they went. This place was like a tomb, silent and ancient. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking their every move. "Keep scanning the area," Cruz ordered. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with before it's too late." The fleet continued to advance, but the longer they stayed in the void, the more the oppressive silence began to gnaw at them. The crew worked without speaking, their focus unwavering, but even they could feel the tension mounting. There was no turning back now. The galaxy's fate was in their hands. Suddenly, a low hum filled the bridge, followed by a loud metallic scraping sound that seemed to come from every direction. The entire ship shuddered as if something large had just brushed past them. Cruz's eyes darted around the room, her heart racing. "What the hell was that?" she demanded, gripping the railing in front of her. The tactical officer quickly brought up the scans. "Admiral, we've detected massive structures on the edge of our radar. Something big is out there, and it's moving fast." Before Cruz could respond, the lights flickered, and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. Something was closing in, something far larger than they had anticipated. The fleet was surrounded, trapped in the vast emptiness of space with no escape. "All ships, power up shields." Cruz barked. "Weapons ready. We're not going down without a fight." The tension was palpable as the fleet braced for whatever was coming. Outside, the unknown force emerged from the shadows of the void. A massive, imposing ship appeared on the scanners, its silhouette jagged and menacing. It was unlike any ship the crew had ever seen, its hull covered in strange markings and its engines burning with a pale, otherworldly glow. The ship was colossal, so large that it seemed to block out the stars as it loomed over them. It was a warship, but not one made by any civilization that Earth had encountered before. It was a thing of nightmares, its presence alone enough to send chills down the spine of any who dared to look upon it. "Admiral, this is unlike anything we've seen," the tactical officer said, his voice trembling. "It's armed to the teeth. We're outmatched." Cruz's mind raced, but she refused to show fear. Earth's fleet was strong, and she knew their crew had the skill to fight back. Still, the size and power of this unknown warship were overwhelming. She quickly gave orders to prepare for a fight, hoping that they had the firepower to take on this new enemy. The giant ship closed in, its weapons charging up with an eerie hum. Cruz's grip tightened on the console in front of her. This wasn't just a skirmish. It was an all-out battle for survival. "Captain," one of the officers said urgently, "we're being hailed. The enemy is attempting to communicate." Cruz hesitated. This could be a trick, a way to confuse them or lure them into a false sense of security. But it could also be their only chance to learn what they were up against. "Open the channel," she commanded. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted but unmistakably alien. "Earth," the voice said, cold and mechanical. "You dare to enter our domain. You have no place here. Leave now or be destroyed." The threat was clear, and Cruz could hear the smug confidence in the voice. It was the voice of an enemy who believed they were invincible. But Cruz wasn't about to back down. She knew what Earth's fleet was capable of, and they had one advantage the enemy didn't understand: humanity's will to fight. "We're not leaving," Cruz replied firmly, her voice echoing with the strength of her resolve. "We came here to protect the galaxy, and we will not let you destroy it. Prepare to face Earth's fleet." The transmission cut off, and the massive enemy ship moved in closer, its weapons now fully charged. The battle was about to begin, and Cruz knew that they were in for the fight of their lives. "Target the enemy's weapon systems," Cruz ordered, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. "We take out their firepower first. Everyone else, hold your positions. We fight to win." As the first shots were fired, the battle erupted into chaos. Explosions rocked the black void as Earth's fleet engaged the enemy, their weapons lighting up the darkness. The massive warship fired its guns, sending shockwaves through space. But Earth's fleet was quick and nimble, dodging the blasts and returning fire. Cruz watched as the battle unfolded before her, each ship moving with precision, each crew member fighting with everything they had. She had no idea how this would end, but one thing was certain: Earth was not going to back down. They had entered the black void to face an enemy like no other, and now the fight for the galaxy's survival was in full swing. As the two forces clashed in the void, Cruz knew they were only scratching the surface of the danger that lay ahead. This battle was just the beginning. And the true enemy, whatever it was, had yet to reveal itself. The battle raged on in the void, the silence of space now broken by the deafening roar of weapons fire and the violent impact of blasts. The massive enemy warship seemed unyielding, its hull thick with armor, its weapons firing relentlessly. Yet Earth's fleet held their ground, weaving through the chaos, their tactics swift and calculated. Admiral Cruz stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic battlefield. The lights flickered, and the tension was thick in the air. Every officer around her was fully engaged, their focus intense, yet there was something unsettling about the enemy's attack. It wasn't just the size of their warship or the ferocity of their fire. It was something else, something hidden just beyond the veil of the battle. "Admiral, we're taking heavy hits," the tactical officer shouted, his voice trained with urgency. "Shields are holding, but we can't keep this up forever." Cruz's jaw tightened. Earth's fleet was strong, but the enemy's relentless firepower was overwhelming. Even with their advanced technology and superior tactics, the sheer might of the enemy ship was something no one could have prepared for. "Don't let up," Cruz barked. "We can't afford to fall back. Push forward. Take out their weapon systems." But as the fleet continued to press forward, something strange began to happen. The enemy ship was not just resisting. They were adapting. The way it moved, the way it fired, it was as if it knew Earth's fleet's every move before they made it. The officers on the bridge were stunned. "Admiral," one of them said, his voice trembling, "they're predicting our movements. How are they doing this?" Cruz's mind raced. She had seen nothing like it. The enemy was operating with an intelligence beyond anything they had faced before. They were not just fighting. They were studying Earth's every move, countering each strategy as it came. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Cruz ordered. "Whatever they're doing, we can't let them read us like a book." But it was already too late. As Earth's ships began to scatter, trying to outmaneuver the enemy's fire, a new wave of attacks hit them from all directions. The enemy's ship had deployed smaller craft, sleek, fast, and heavily armed. They swarmed like a swarm of angry hornets, cutting through Earth's defenses with surgical precision. "Admiral, they've surrounded us," the communications officer reported in panic. "We can't break through their line." Cruz's heart sank. The enemy wasn't just powerful, they were methodical. And now, they were forcing Earth's fleet into a deadly trap. The smaller ships moved with uncanny coordination, attacking from every angle. No matter where Earth's ships turned, there was always an enemy ship waiting to strike. What's their plan? Kruz muttered, trying to make sense of the chaos. It felt like the enemy was playing a game they knew they were winning. The enemy warship continued to fire, but its tactics were different now. It wasn't just about overwhelming force, it was about precision. Every shot seemed to target a specific weak point, and Earth's ships were beginning to suffer. One by one, they took damage, shields failing, engines sputtering, and vital systems breaking down under the strain. Kruz clenched her fists. We need to get them out of our space. All ships, engage with full power. We will fight until we can't fight anymore. But just as Earth's fleet began to push back, the enemy warship made a move that left everyone speechless. From the depths of its hull, a new weapon emerged. It was massive, bigger than anything Earth had ever encountered. A swirling vortex of energy began to form, a violent whirlpool of raw power that sucked in everything around it. "Admiral, they're opening a rift," the sensors officer yelled, her voice filled with fear. "It's a gravity well. Nothing can escape its pull." The entire fleet seemed to freeze in place. No one had ever seen anything like it. The massive energy weapon began to pull in ships from every direction, dragging them toward the growing rift. The darkness around them seemed to intensify, and Kruz could feel the very fabric of space beginning to warp. "Get us out of here," Kruz shouted, her voice strained. "Now. Full reverse. All ships. Retreat." But the gravitational force of the rift was too powerful. Earth's ships fought against it, engines firing at full power, but it was a losing battle. The rift grew larger and larger, swallowing everything in its path. Kruz's stomach twisted with dread as she watched ships being pulled toward the center, disappearing into the nothingness. "Admiral, we can't break free," the pilot shouted, panic creeping into his voice. The bridge fell into chaos. The sensors officer screamed, "It's too late. The rift is going to collapse on us. We're going to." But her words were cut off as the rift's power intensified, pulling everything in. Kruz had never felt such overwhelming power. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. As the darkness closed in, she realized with a sinking heart that Earth's fleet was not just fighting an enemy. It was fighting something that had the power to reshape the very universe itself. In that moment, Kruz made a vow. If they survived this, they would find a way to fight back. They had come this far. There was no turning back now. As the rift closed in, there was only one thing on Kruz's mind. Earth would not be destroyed. Not today. The pull of the rift was overwhelming. The light from the battle seemed to fade as the darkness of the gravitational force swallowed everything. Earth's fleet was losing, their ships helpless against the power of the enemy's weapon. One by one, they were being dragged toward the center, engines sputtering and shields failing under the immense pressure. Admiral Kruz stood on the bridge, her face pale, her mind racing. She watched in horror as her fleet was slowly being consumed. It was a nightmare, one she couldn't wake up from. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and the officers around her were silent, their faces grim as they saw the inevitable unfold before them. "Admiral, we're losing them," the tactical officer said quietly, his voice heavy with defeat. "We can't escape the rift. It's too powerful." Kruz clenched her fists, her thoughts a whirlwind of panic and frustration. She had fought for this moment, this chance to protect humanity. Now it seemed like it was all slipping away. Earth's fleet was on the verge of total destruction, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But then, through the chaos, something unexpected happened. A sudden jolt ran through the ship, a pulse of energy that caused the entire fleet to shudder. It wasn't the pull of the rift, it was something else. "What's happening?" Kruz shouted, her heart racing with a mix of hope and disbelief. She looked at the sensor readouts, her mind trying to make sense of what was unfolding. The rift, the force that had been dragging their ships toward oblivion, was starting to slow down. The powerful energy that had been sucking everything in was suddenly weakening, its grip loosening. Earth's fleet, once trapped in the rift's grasp, began to break free. "Admiral," the communications officer cried out, his eyes wide with astonishment. "The rift, it's destabilizing. The enemy's weapon is failing." Cruz's heart skipped a beat. Could this be possible? Was the enemy's greatest weapon beginning to malfunction? For the first time in what felt like hours, she allowed herself a breath of relief. But that relief was short-lived, for as the rift began to shrink, the enemy's warship responded with fury. The massive enemy vessel fired its weapons, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts aimed at Earth's fleet. But now, the power of the rift was no longer an advantage. It was a weakness. The enemy had overextended itself, focusing so much on the rift that it had left its defenses vulnerable. Earth's fleet, now freed from the rift's grip, could strike back. "Return fire," Cruz ordered, her voice sharp with determination. "Give them everything we've got. We're not letting them take us down without a fight." The ships of Earth's fleet, battered but not broken, surged forward with renewed strength. The tactical officers worked quickly, calculating the perfect angles to fire at the enemy's warship. Earth's weapons fired with deadly precision, hitting the enemy ship's exposed weak points. The battle was far from over, but the tide had shifted. The enemy warship, once so powerful and untouchable, was now reeling from the counterattack. Earth's fleet, though battered, was relentless. Each shot was a message. Humanity was not ready to give up. But the enemy was not finished. As the enemy warship groaned, its outer hull buckling from the force of the hits, a new threat emerged. Small fighter ships, fast and deadly, launched from the warship's bay. They moved in waves, aiming to overwhelm Earth's fleet once more. Cruz's heart sank. The battle was turning into a deadly dance. Earth's fleet had gained the upper hand, but the enemy was relentless. They would not give up. And now, with their fighter ships swarming, the battle was far from won. "Admiral, the enemy's deploying fighter craft," the sensors officer shouted, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're preparing for a full assault." Cruz's mind raced. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about surviving, about proving that humanity's strength was more than just firepower. It was about strategy, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will to fight. "Deploy all fighters," Cruz commanded. "We're not backing down now. Every ship, every weapon, keep them off our backs." Earth's fighters shot out from the fleet, cutting through the void like sharp blades. The enemy's fighters met them head-on in a violent collision of metal and fire. The space around them became a deadly battleground, where each fighter sought to outmaneuver the other. In the midst of the chaos, Cruz spotted something on the sensor readouts that made her blood run cold. The enemy warship was preparing to launch another massive attack, the rift weapon recharging for one final strike. "Get the fleet out of range," Cruz shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "We can't let them fire that thing again." But as the fleet maneuvered, Earth's ships were still too close. The rift weapon was charging faster than Cruz had anticipated. If they didn't move quickly, they would be caught in the blast, once again trapped by the rift's deadly power. As the countdown began, Cruz's mind worked quickly, formulating a plan. They had no choice but to make a desperate move, one that would either save them or doom them all. "We have to go all in," Cruz muttered to herself, her voice steely with resolve. "Brace for impact, everyone. We're making our move now." The fleet's fighters took the brunt of the enemy's fire as Cruz's ship cut through space, diving in towards the heart of the enemy warship. With every move, she could see the rift weapon glowing brighter, preparing to fire. She activated the ship's engines to their maximum, racing toward the enemy warship with all the speed her ship could muster. The rift weapon was almost fully charged now, and Cruz knew there was no time left. "Lock on to the rift weapon's core," Cruz commanded, her voice calm, despite the chaos around her. "I'm going to destroy it from the inside." As the ship's targeting system locked onto the power core of the rift weapon, Kruz's eyes narrowed with determination. She could feel the immense pressure of the enemy's fire and the energy growing in the core, but there was no turning back. She tapped a button on her console, activating the ship's self-destruct sequence. The power surge sent a shockwave through the ship as the countdown began. The only way to stop the rift weapon was for Kruz's ship to make a final sacrifice. "This is it," Kruz muttered to herself, watching as the countdown timer ticked away. "This is for humanity." With one final push, her ship slammed into the heart of the enemy warship, its engines overloading as it crashed into the rift weapon's core. The rift weapon erupted in a blinding flash of light as Kruz's ship detonated, sending shockwaves through space. The rift weapon collapsed, its immense power shattered by the explosion. The enemy warship, its defenses destroyed, was left a smoldering wreck in space. But Earth's fleet had no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over. As the rift weapon's destruction caused ripples in space, the enemy's remaining forces regrouped for one last desperate stand. Kruz had sacrificed everything, but her final act of defiance had changed the course of the war. The tide had shifted, and now it was humanity's turn to finish what they had started. The galaxy would never forget the moment Earth's warships arrived, and the moment humanity proved that they would never back down. The dust of battle had barely settled when the surviving ships of Earth's fleet began to regroup. The destruction of the rift weapon had been the turning point, but the cost had been unimaginable. Admiral Kruz's ship, along with hundreds of brave soldiers, was now lost to the void. The galaxy would forever remember her sacrifice, but humanity still had a battle to win. From the command deck of the fleet's flagship, the officers were silent as they assessed the damage. The enemy warships, now leaderless and in disarray, were attempting to reorganize, but they knew it was too late. The rift weapon had been their last hope, and now that hope was gone. Admiral Kruz gave everything, Captain Harlow said softly, staring at the remains of the enemy warships. "We need to finish this now." "We will," replied Commander Riley, her voice firm but filled with sorrow. She didn't die in vain. The fleet moved quickly, securing any surviving enemy vessels and setting up defensive perimeters. The enemy forces were no longer cohesive. Without the rift weapon and their leader, they were just a disjointed group of ships with no direction. Earth's fleet, still intact and filled with resolve, was ready for the final push. But there was no time for celebration. The enemy had one last surprise waiting for them. Just when Earth's fleet thought they had won, a new threat emerged from the shadows, an even larger fleet hidden beyond the nearby asteroid field. It was a final desperate attempt to end the conflict with one last crushing blow. "New fleet detected on an intercept course," Lieutenant Walker announced urgently. "They're deploying every ship they have left. This is their last chance." Admiral Kruz's sacrifice had bought them some time, but it seemed the enemy was determined to fight until the very end. The Earth fleet was now facing overwhelming odds, but it didn't matter. Humanity was not backing down. "We've come this far," Admiral Harlow declared, standing tall at the center of the command deck. "We have the advantage. Let's finish this fight." The final battle began in an instant. Earth's fleet formed up, deploying fighters and capital ships in tight formation, preparing to face the full might of the enemy's forces. Plasma cannons erupted, missile trails lit up the void, and the stars themselves seemed to shudder at the intensity of the conflict. It was chaos, but it was a controlled chaos. Humanity's ships fought with a ferocity born from the desperation of knowing that failure meant extinction. They were determined to survive, no matter the cost. And then it happened. Earth's flagship, alongside several other key ships, moved into position, opening up a full offensive on the heart of the enemy fleet. The enemy's front line buckled under the force of Earth's firepower. The ships that had once seemed invincible were now falling one by one. "Target their command ship," Commander Riley ordered. "That's their only chance for control." The Earth fleet's guns turned toward the massive flagship at the center of the enemy forces. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but in the end, Earth's ships held the line. One by one, the enemy's remaining ships were picked off, unable to stand against the sheer will and strength of humanity's fleet. As the last enemy ship was disabled, the surviving enemy commanders surrendered, knowing they had lost. The once great force that had sought to destroy Earth and its people was now shattered, and the galaxy was safe once more. Admiral Harlow stood silent, staring out into the vastness of space, the echoes of the final battle still ringing in his ears. Earth's warships had not only fought for their survival, but for the future of the galaxy. It had been a long, brutal struggle, but humanity had proven their strength, resilience, and determination. "We did it," Lieutenant Walker said quietly. "It's over." "Yes," Harlow replied, a solemn look in his eyes. "It's over, but we will never forget the sacrifices made. Admiral Cruz and every soul lost in this fight gave their lives so that we could live. We owe them everything." The crew stood still, honoring those who had given it all. Humanity had faced the impossible, and now they had emerged victorious. Earth's warships had proven their worth on the battlefield, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. As the fleet began its journey back home, the remaining ships gathered together in a formation of strength, unity, and pride. The future of the galaxy had been secured, and Earth had made its mark as a force to be reckoned with. In the end, humanity had shown that they were not just survivors. They were warriors, and the galaxy would know their name forever. The battle had ended, but the legend of Earth's warships was only just beginning.